Whoa, is that your girl's favorite astrologer? Yes, it is. Y'all, for today, we're going to get into the second house. The second house in astrology, this governs the material world, stability, food, taste, finances. This represents how we create stability because this is our values. This is what we value, our tastes, what we appreciate on a personal level. Currency, the energy within. This is why this is our personal value system right here. This can represent what we like to invest in, literally, how we like to consume, our consuming habits. This is why you have food here. But remember, this is always about the basic necessities, resources, finances, stability. And this is why the second house is very important as well for relationships and even children. The third house in astrology, this is about communication. This represents data. In astrosthetics, the third house is all about the values that we want to communicate. This is how we spread the message. This is why the third house can represent communication. It can represent thinking. It represents how we transmit the message. So this is how we talk, how we think, what is on our minds. The third house in astrosthetics also represents idealism. This is the ideas and how we communicate them because what we think about is what we talk about. You feel me? Yeah, make sure I pick up a copy of Astrosthetics, okay? And that is the third house. This is how we transmit data and communicate. The third house rules thinking. The fourth house in astrology. This is all about emotions. The fourth house is, in a way, very similar to the second house, except this is where your emotions get involved. The fourth house can also represent your house, your home. And this is why in astrosthetics, the fourth house is your internal space, your emotional body. And it can also represent ancestors. It can also represent the mother. It can represent the nurturer. It can represent the emotional support system as well, because this is what family is for. This is what family is for. It can also represent estates. It can represent even generational planning, maternal ancestry, all of these beautiful things. We love the fourth house. The fifth house, this is the house of creativity. This is the house of primordial creative self-expression. This essentially is the house of joy. The fifth house is the house of fun. The girls just want to have fun, right? So when the girls just want to have fun, they gonna come to the fifth house because this is where we celebrate. In astrosthetics, we look at the fifth house as the house to celebrate. This is how we celebrate ourselves. This is some of our most beautiful, brightest qualities. And it can also represent children. It can represent romance. It represents how we assert the love within that we have and how we creatively express it to the world. That is the fifth house. Now, the sixth house in astrology, this governs routine. This is how we maintain things on a day-to-day level. This is why the sixth house is also about hygiene. It's our daily regime, which is your culture, your daily rituals and practice. It becomes perfect because the sixth house is how we practice. It's how we work. It's how we, once again, maintain, upkeep. The sixth house can also represent skincare, hygienic qualities. It can represent diet because this can represent consistency. Whatever you do, consistency, your daily ritual becomes how you take care of your physical body. The sixth house can also represent health. Now, the seventh house in astrology, this is all about partnerships and astrosthetics. We see this as perspective. This is the relatability factor. You see how right now you're looking at Lex and it's a flex because I'm looking at you and you looking at me? This is the seventh house. The seventh house is about relationships because right now I'm trying to relate to you. I'm communicating something. And the first house is the house of self. The seventh house rules others. It rules perspectives. It rules how other people see things, other people's idea of you. This is why it can also rule relationships. It can rule contracts. It can rule binding agreements. It can rule getting on the same page. This is how we relate with one another. The seventh house is amazing, baby. The eighth house in astrology. This is all about psychology. And astrosthetics, yes, we look at the eighth house as the house of psychology because this is also the house of sex. This is the house of other people's energy. You see how the second house is your own energy? The eighth house across from the second house is other people's energy. So this is how we merge with other people. This is how we take action with other people. This is how we like to create with other people. This is what how we take on other people's energy, what qualities we absorb from each other. And the eighth house can also represent joint estates, joint contracts, joint agreements. It rules where it can also rule chemical energy as well and nuclear energy. The ninth house in astrology, this governs how we deal with philosophy, when we travel, when we expand our awareness. In astrosthetics, the ninth house, this is where we expand our horizon. This is how we go to the next level. This is why this also can rule higher education. This might be when we want to travel, how we want to expand, how we want to tap into exotic thinking. The ninth house also rules exotic things. This is how we really begin to take a higher course of action because the ninth house represents our higher sense of ambition. So the ninth house also rules our ambitious desires and it can also rule fortune as well. We love the ninth. The 10th house in astrology, this rules business, career, higher occupation. This can also rule responsibility. The 10th house can also rule courts, judges. It rules business that we are obligated to. Whereas the seventh house can rule people that we are obligated to. The 10th house brings it to a whole other level because this is where you get authorities. So the 10th house, it can represent authorities in the career field. It can represent our long-term path and our long-term goals. This is why it can represent our status. And the eighth house and the 10th house can represent our legacy, but the 10th house is more so inclined with the public perception in astrosthetics. The 11th house in astrology. This rules society, humankind, mankind, the ideas of the collective. This is the ideas of society at large. The 11th house in astrosthetics is the mind at large. This is why the 11th house, it can rule aspects of societal trends. It can rule audiences. It can rule groups of people. It can rule how we deal with technology. It also can rule friends. It rules the public ideas. This is why the 11th house also can represent the vision. It represents the village and groups of people, humanity. The 11th house is the house of humanity and astrosthetics. Make sure y'all pick up astrosthetics, y'all. Let's continue. The 12th house in astrology. This rules spirituality. In astrosthetics, we look at the 12th house as the house of imagination. This is the house of cinema. In astrosthetics, we literally look at the 12th house as the house of cinema, the unseen. This is the house of mystery. This is the invisibility house. So this is why in astrosthetics, we look at the 12th house as the blind spot. This is the things that we got to be spiritually aware. So this is why the 12th house, it can also represent dreams. but it can also rule temples. Some people may even say hospitals, but the 12th house can even rule religious settings as well. The 12th house is very epic, but typically it can rule the unseen. So when you need a natal chart, they need to know where you were born, where the sun was when you were born, your birthday, and the place, the time and the place. This allows us to measure the location of where you were born in relationship with the heavens. And when we measure where you were born with the heavens and the date and time, this creates the natal chart. And then the natal chart is then divided into 12 different spaces or houses or casas or dimensions. And each of these 12 dimensions are all different flavors and different types of houses. And then after this, we have aspects that show us the mathematical relationship between these houses. The first house in astrology and the 10th house in astrology. These are some of the most important houses on the chart. Now, in astrosthetics, we know that the first house, fourth house, seventh house, and the 10th house, these houses are the foundations for the natal chart, especially when you're studying tropical astrology. And we know that with tropical astrology, part of importance is the tropics, right? Because that's where you get the tropics from, or the tropical astrology, because the part of that's important with tropical astrology is the tropics. So this is why, especially in tropical astrology, the first house, fourth house, seventh house, and the 10th house, in a way, these would be the houses of the tropics. And this is why these houses are so powerful.